This is Martin Giles of the Guildford Dragon News, and today I'm with Joss Bigmore, the leader of Guildford Borough Council, for another roundup interview of current issues at the Borough Council. Joss, welcome once again to the Guildford Dragon.
Thank you, Martin. I think we might need an hour for this one, given everything that's been going on.
Well, bearing that in mind, I'd be very grateful for concise answers, because we have got quite a lot to cover. Our readers do have lives to lead, so be grateful if you can keep things concise. So obviously at the top of the list, I think understandably, would be the recent departure of the lead councillor and deputy council leader Jan Harwood from the Lib Dems to the Conservatives. Now there's been a lot written about that. We don't want to go all over that again, I don't think. But what to me is important is I'd like to talk a little bit about the causes of that, but also about more about the impact of it. So the causes of it, I mean, I had sensed some tensions, which are completely normal, I think, in politics, between different groups within parties and different parties. So was it those tensions that finally came to play, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not party to the internal discussions of the Liberal Democrats, but I think most councillors noticed that there was, unhappiness or discontent or frustration between, as you said, as there are with all groups, and obviously that's resulted in Jan deciding what he's decided to do, which is move to the Conservative Party. Okay,
now within the Lib Dem group. And I have invited Julia McShane so I can speak to her about this directly. But going back to the adoption of the local plan, it was obviously there were differences of opinion there because they voted different ways in that vote. And we had the leader alone voting in favour of the local plan. Several others abstained and some voted against. So it was clear that there wasn't a party line on that, and they quite fairly said that they weren't pushing a party line on it. It was up to individuals to vote which way they wanted to do. But it seems that those different opinions still exist within their group. Is that fair from your point of view?
I don't know. I mean, as I said, I don't go to Liberal Democrat group meetings. I'm not sure planning was particularly internally contentious for them. I mean, we have an adopted plan, and the Liberal Democrats are focused on delivering that local plan. If anything, the tensions planning are between R4GB and the Lib Dems, where we have a slightly more aggressive attitude. Well, okay. Slightly, we have a more aggressive attitude to changing.
So let's distill it down to that then. How would you define the difference in attitude on plan or in policy on planning between your two groups?
Well, I think it comes from the residents we represent. I mean, obviously, our group has a very diverse group of ward councillors. We have, Clarendon, Horsley, we have Ripley, we have Town Centre, we even have a councillor over in Ash and Shalford. So we whereas the Liberal Democrats are, with aside from Councillor Hogger, very, very concentrated in the urban areas. So naturally, we have a more protective attitude to the green belt and to the villages, which is kind of at odds. And you've seen the tension in public meetings certainly with Councillor Harwood that saw the housing crisis. And bear in mind, he's a lot younger. I mean, most of my group already kind of own their houses and are at a different stage of their lives. So we have a different perspective. So I have respect for differing opinions, but certainly there is a different in outlook, which is why you see all of the motions at council about reviewing and updating the local plan come from R4GB or GGG.
Okay, but do you think Jan Harwood's view of the local plan and others and the other views on the executive, particularly the R4GB views, was that a major factor, do you think, that drove his decision or not?
I'm not him, so I can't speak for that. We worked through those issues. We have passed a motion to review and update the local plan with Liberal Democrat support. So we managed those tensions I think, his was more a decision where he felt better, he fitted better within a group, and he's decided that that's the Conservatives, and I wish him well in that.
Okay, so now looking forward, obviously that leaves a gap in your executive, and I think you've said that you're looking to do a reshuffle in December. Is that correct?
Well, I like to do it as soon as possible, because I think it's good to have clarity of leadership. Obviously, I lead a coalition arrangement, and just as we had negotiations a year or so ago with the Liberal Democrats, where we decided a 4 and a 4 split of the executive, now we have an opportunity to say, is this working? Do we need 5 and 5? Could we potentially go to a rainbow coalition? There's the options are back on the table, and that's something, I don't command a majority in the chamber, and we need to compromise and collaborate together to come for the best leadership team to solve the problems that we're trying to solve. I think, unfortunately, the kind of political discourse since Jan made his announcement has made some of those combinations a lot harder than perhaps it should have done if people had kept their counsel, and as I've tried to do, and stay pretty balanced. But I would hope we would announce the addition or the additions to the executive as soon as possible.
Okay, now you're referring there to the letter from Councillor Spooner, which readers can see on our website. But okay, so thank you for that. Now I'm going to move on. So next, I'd like to talk about openness, and it was a major plank, I think, of your campaign in 2019, that you wanted to increase the amount of openness at the Borough Council. How far do you think you succeeded?
I think that's not for me to judge. I think we have put things in place. With
well, it is but it is for you to judge it. You're the leader of the.
Well, I mean, I can tell you that I think we're making strides, but if you don't think we are, I mean, I think that with the.
No, but I'm asking your opinion here.
I have not. I am comfortable that we've been very open and transparent with all the decision making that we have made, and I'm confident that we're fulfilling our pledge to be more open and transparent, and we're reviewing various things that have happened in the past, as you know, and we're learning from those, and policy and standards are being updated regularly.
Okay, now I'm going to give you a couple of instances where people might say there could be more openness. Firstly, over the settlement deal with James Whiteman. Now,
Martin, I cannot. Before you go on, I do not write employment law, and I did not write our internal policy. Also, James has a right to a certain amount of privacy about anything that's agreed until it is required to be published by law. So James has rights in this.
Yes, but he could waive those, couldn't he, if he
wishes to? Yes.
Yeah. But is there anything in law then that stops you saying what the size of the settlements are?
Well, James could bring grievance.
Okay, then that's what's preventing you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus, personally, I know it's I believe you used to be a civil servant. I know that it's something I find uncomfortable with, people knowing what council officers earn. I understand it's public money and it's necessary, but I find it's a little distasteful for people to be discussing people's financial arrangements. But
it doesn't actually, does it really in reality lead to people discussing it that way? The money does.
I don't know. If you'd watched the council meeting the other night, people seemed very excited about it.
Okay, but I mean, it has happened for a long time, and it doesn't seem to have had a huge detrimental effect that people know what civil servants earn, or anyone else in the.
I'm not a civil servant, but all I know is that James deserves privacy if he wishes.
Yes, but it is public money, isn't it?
Yeah, and it will be published as part of the accounts next year.
So what would it be the harm in bringing that date forward?
As I said, if the advice I've had is if the settlement is discussed in public, it can give rise to grievance from the affected parties, which is James Whiteman.
Okay.
So if I wish to take that risk, or if any councillor wishes to take the risk, they can put the council at risk, and maybe there's a case, maybe there's not, but I'm not willing to do that because that risks further public money.
Well, you've explained why you don't want to do it. Thank you. Secondly, we understand that reports, in particular, there was a report at Overview and Scrutiny on the the chimney at the crematorium.
Yeah.
And we understand that the original version of that was not the one that was presented at the committee, and that it was changed after receipt by council officers. Do you think that's right, that that should happen? Or at least that the original version shouldn't be available?
I think that is absolute nonsense. What happened was that the independent auditor changed the individual that was doing the audit. So the first draft was written by a different auditor than the second draft. So the council officers obviously respond, as with any audit, and clarify points, but that report was authored by an independent auditor. The council officers can, challenge points, and the auditor can come back, ignore them, whatever. You've done these things before, but there is absolutely no way that a council officer adjusted that report for the purposes of going to overview and scrutiny. I will also say that that building is award-winning and fantastic. We only get positive feedback from it, and it provides solace to people in very difficult times. It's not my project. This was, I think Councillor Furness started it. Congratulations. It is a fantastic building that has won awards. And this, the contractor made a mistake. Thankful to the member of the public for pointing it out. An investigation was run that it has cost the council nothing. It has been resolved, end of. So I don't, a mistake was made. We've been very open about that. It wasn't ours. It hasn't cost us anything. And I really don't see this as a huge issue that other people make it out to be. I'm just I'm very proud of the building.
You've made some strong points there, but the member of the public that brought this to the council's attention also mentioned an email in which a council officer said, I'm used to managing expectations, relating to how much information could be released. That's not the way a council officer.
I can't comment on something I haven't seen.
Okay. Well, it was mentioned at the overview and scrutiny committee meeting. Okay. Let's move on then to shared services with Waverley. Can you give us an update on how that's going?
Well, I mean, the new Joint Chief Executive was formally offered a contract at the last full council meeting. His first day at work is the 1st of December. So obviously at the moment, there's some preliminary discussions going on with him meeting the various directors and service leaders, and also the directors and service leading meeting their counterparts at Waverley. So at the moment, there is not, a concrete plan for the next steps, because Tom Horwood is not firmly in post as the Joint Chief Executive until the 1st of December.
Okay. And do you think there are going to be, I mean, obviously in any new arrangement, there are teething issues and people have to get used to new ways of working, etc. But how are you looking to address situations where there could be a decision to make about where resources are directed, either towards something that one borough council is doing or another?
When you mean resources, the financial arrangements of each council will remain independent. Right. So these are still two separate councils. Now, you can argue Tom Horwood, where does he allocate his time?
Exactly.
So council officers' time and how we structure the senior management team to give councillors comfort that they're getting their fair share is obviously something we're going to have to work through, because it's not going to be 2.5 days each. It's not that simplistic.
No,
exactly. There'll be weeks when you have to spend all the time in Waverley, and there may be a fortnight you need to spend most of it in Guildford. I mean, that's kind of the nature of the beast, and I think we need to be flexible as we move through this to see, which businesses we can completely put together and which ones we require some kind of autonomy. And the more strategic projects, obviously, you're going to need leadership in each area, but there are some that are identical. And Godalming is 4 miles down the road from Guildford. Okay. It makes no sense. So I'm quite excited about the opportunities that we have, and I'm very comforted by a very similar vision coming from Paul Follows and Peter Clark from the political leadership of Waverley. So I think we can do something really quite special here and really improve our services and make them a lot more resilient by working together.
Okay, but to some degree, it's a bridge you have to cross when you get to it, because you can't predict everything. No one can. Yeah. But on the other hand, there are examples of this model working elsewhere in the country, aren't there?
Absolutely. I mean, there's we've had conversations with with people on the south coast and in Suffolk. I mean, it's just Surrey doesn't seem to have done this yet. In fact, Tom Horwood worked in an authority like this in the past, as is one of our directors, Ian Doyle. So it's not, you know, we like to say we're innovative, but we're actually copying what other people have done.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that the funding situation is difficult, and it looks like it's going to get more difficult. And we have, whilst we've got choices, we have to go and do something, because, you know, when you're left with no choice, it's not normally a good outcome. Whereas at the moment, I think we're being quite proactive. You know, we could kind of muddle through on our own for a few more years probably, but it's like, you know, if we really want to stake in the ground, this is what we want to do in order to protect the services. Because, I mean, you know, bear in mind that Guildford Borough Council gets 9 pence in the pound of your council tax.
Okay,
so,
we're going to go on to the budget in a minute, but just before we leave this, so we can be reassured that you have looked at other examples, taken their
absolutely, and there will be, you know, before we start looking at these, there will be much more detailed business cases showing that this is providing savings. You know, deciding our political decision to do this top down, i.e. have a joint chief executive to drive the process, was a decision. Other people have just kind of done it service by service and kept the separate management in place.
Yeah.
But I think if you really want to get the cultural change of kind of one team of officers providing, you know, service, you need to have that clarity of direction at the top. And I think that's why we've decided to do it, or from the top down, and the two councils have agreed with us.
Okay, and how any of the examples you've looked at, have they been where you have two councils of different political persuasion going into this agreement?
Well, I mean, the changes all the time. So, I mean, at the moment, it is a very neat arrangement with both groups being a coalition between, you know,
here it is.
Primarily residents and Lib Dems, although Waverley also have Labour and Green on their executive. Yeah. So, you know, I just think we have 2 years or a year and a half until the next election to prove that this is the way forward. And whoever comes after me, whether it's me or somebody else, you know, would be silly to turn back from this route.
And I understand that, and I understand the situation here, but of course it can change. But have any of the examples you've looked at being where you've got, you know, a Labour council and a Lib Dem council, or a Tory council and another party joining together?
Not in the initial
joining their services,
not at the initial stage, but obviously over time things change. But I think that you know in the past the Conservatives have tried to do a more shared service approach with Waverley, and it's kind of always fallen down. So just because you're the same party doesn't mean you get on very well.
Okay.
You know, it's you know there's tensions everywhere, but this, you know, there's lots of reasons that push us together, and it's not really this is not politics. This is more about arranging a business in the most efficient way.
Okay, now we are like to move on to the budget, please. And you've just been saying about the difficulties, and I think anyone that's been reading anything in the local news in the recent year will know what the challenge, the financial challenge that the council faces, and it's primarily caused by the reduction in funding from central government. I think most people agree that that's the primary reason. Do you think, do you do everything you can to highlight the problem to our MP and to politicians at Westminster?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we have regular dialogue, and you know, there's lobbying via the officers through to the civil service, and there's political lobbying. But it's not you know, Surrey County Council as a Conservative council have the same issue. I mean, it's silly thing. Well, not silly things. You know, the national insurance increase to raise money for the social care or the NHS or whatever the government decides to spend it on, that costs Guildford Borough Council 300 grand, you know, in increased employer costs for it. So it's like, oh, thank you very much. You know, the energy crisis, it might be another 100 grand at the Spectrum to keep the pools warm and the ice rink frozen. So I mean, you know, I have to find that money from somewhere, and it just doesn't seem a lot of joined up thinking. And you know, Guildford in the past, you know, we have had to rely on commercial streams. So there is a structural problem whereby the grant from central government gets smaller and smaller. And then cyclically, obviously, car park revenues are still down, which is traditionally quite a big provider of revenue for us. And that hasn't recovered in the commuter car parks. So there's cyclical reasons as well as structural. You know, but we have been increasingly forced down a commercial route because of I mean, the government has the same problem as us. They are got the biggest debt in a long while and a big budget deficit. There's not a lot of money anywhere. And, you know, I can either cry and rant and shout at the moon, or I come up with solutions to try and solve it, which is what we're trying to do. And there's some really, really difficult decisions that we have to make. And, you know, it's all well and good, you know, everyone saying, oh, this is terrible. It's like, I agree. I don't like doing it, but give me another choice. You know, the pandemic cost £6.5 million in our reserves last year. We're budgeted a 3 million overspend this year. You know, this reserves can only be spent once, and I'm not really comfortable dipping into them with an uncertain outlook. You know, you get another variant and we're all locked down again. It's a huge hit. So, you know, we need to make sure that we balance our budget. And, you know, we are a very generous council. As I said, we collect 9 pence in the pound of every household's council tax. So that's about £200 per property. Personally, I'd pay that just for the bin service. You know, and I think we provide over £400 worth of service because of the other revenue streams. So, you know, 75p in the pound goes to the county, and then the rest goes to the police. You know, the borough council itself, and you know, it's too convoluted, the kind of the setup of all the different local authorities. But I'm pretty proud of the way that we provide, the amount of service we provide for the council tax we receive. And it is really unfortunate that we have to start cutting some funding, but we're not talking about cutting funding to zero. These are relatively small cuts. You know, we ourselves as a council have probably 150 officers less than we had a couple of years ago. You know, they didn't get a pay rise last year. We're not doing anything to anybody else that we haven't done to ourselves first. So I think there's a message there in a bit of solidarity. And, you know, we're not in a position like central government to be able to borrow out of a budget crisis. You know, we have to balance our books through our existing means.
Well, you've given a very extensive answer there, and thank you. And
sorry, we're over time already.
But actually, I let you continue because it's an important subject, and I think you have covered, you know, some of the problems associated. There aren't simple answers to this.
No.
You know,
that's the thing about politics. Politics is about allocating finite resources to infinite wants. And that they are always difficult decisions. And I expect people to lobby hard for their own particular interests, you know, and we as a council will make the decisions that are best, in our opinion, given all of that feedback, for the 160,000 people that live in this borough. Okay,
but just drilling down into a couple of things you said there, the dependence on car park income, which was the largest chunk of the council's income. I don't know if it still is, but it was. Doesn't that show the danger of a more commercial model for our councils?
Yeah, it does. But then, what is your choice? You know, do you're
raising taxes? I guess.
So you know, we have, you know, council tax. I think we keep sub 4%. And in a normal year, the borough collects about 100 million in business rates. We keep less than 4 million, so less than 4%, which is shocking, really. And I understand why people that pay business rates are frustrated, because they see all these business rates going out and don't see their fair share coming back. So I think, you know, there's 10 million roughly in net revenues from car parks. Rental income from our commercial holdings is 7 or 8, and then there's various things. So we try and be diversified, but you are increasingly forced down commercial routes, which puts you at the vagaries of the local economy.
Exactly, higher risk.
Very important. It's very important for me to have a long-term plan to drive economic development in Guildford, which is why the regeneration of the town centre is so important.
Okay. Well, I won't pursue that. Maybe we will at another time, because I think there are other things to tease out there. But thank you for that answer. And I hope it has shown people what a complex area this all is. Right, finally, on climate change. What can a borough council actually do about climate change? Is there very much, or is it really window dressing?
I think the borough council can lead by example with what we're doing ourselves. So we can, you know, change our fleet to electric. We can put solar panels on the roofs. I think, you know, but our contribution to the carbon output of Guildford Borough is actually relatively small. The other important thing that we need to do is transmit messages, you know, from government that this is what we should all be doing, and buy into kind of a centralized strategy, such that, you know, people that want to make a difference, you know, we tell them how to do it. But actually on our own is very, very difficult. And I think this is somewhere where, you know, it almost needs a global strategy, and all of the different layers of governments all across the world need to buy into what are the most important things and make sure we get that behavioral change, because behavioral change is the only thing that's really going to address this. Transport is by far the biggest thing. You know, unless we as all the levels of government can provide residents with alternatives to getting in cars, people are going to get in cars because that's the culture. You know, Guildford is too hilly for the average person to cycle. So we need an electric bike scheme, for instance. We need decent cycleways, you know, bus routes that go where people want them to go. You know, you've seen Arriva can't make buses profitable in Guildford. That is a real problem if you're saying get out your car and get on the bus. It's like, well, I can't because there aren't any. So, I mean, it requires a lot of coordination around everywhere. But, you know, in terms of, you know, Guildford Borough Council becoming net zero by 2030, in the grand scheme of things, that is not going to make a lot of difference to global warming. You know, but I think we need to lead by example, you know, as an organisation and as councillors, to try and encourage those behavioural shifts that we need. But I think, you know, Tim Oliver at Surrey is trying to provide a kind of a greener futures board with a central strategy that hopefully all the boroughs and districts will then buy into parts of that strategy and try and have this coherent message to the residents, because, you know, there's no politics in climate change.
No. Okay. Well, on that note, I'm going to draw the interview to a close. And thank you very much for your time. I know you're a very busy man, and so I do appreciate it. I do hope it plays a part in keeping our local residents informed. I think it does. So, Councillor Joss Bigmore, thank you very much, and I hope we can do this again.
Yeah, look forward to it, Martin.